I've been digging really deep into this philosopher's work. It's Arthur Schopenhauer, and the book is The World as Will and Idea. Now, this book is in the public domain and it's on my website for free if you want it. It's elnatalia.com. I'll link that in the description below. By the way, I'm Lindsay. This is an Astro Mosaics podcast. What we're going to be doing today is using the philosophy of Arthur Schopenhauer, and we're going to take his ideas from the world as will and idea, and we're going to learn more about astrology. We're going to learn more about the planets by breaking that apart and seeing how his life's work basically aligns with how the planets interact with us and express themselves in astrology. So I'm so glad that you're here. I think it's really cool to see if we can align bigger ideas with astrology to expand our worlds, our mindsets, our education. We're educating ourselves through some things that just sort of fall into the wayside. I didn't even really know about Schopenhauer. If I hadn't been a Joseph Campbell fan, he mentions Schopenhauer a lot. Jung mentions Schopenhauer too all the time. So I'm like, cool, okay, I better learn about this guy. He's known as being pessimistic and has pessimistic philosophy generally, but I don't think it is. We're going to go into it a little bit more. So maybe you can tell me what you think after we dig into what his philosophies are. So the first concept is the world as representation. He believed that everything we experience in the world is not as it truly is because we're experiencing it through this filter of our body, of our senses. Just like this idea of Schopenhauer of representation, the planets in our charts, they influence the way we see and experience the world. And those are the filters that you have to filter through to get to conceptual reality. Each planet in astrology represents a different part of our psyche, the sign, the house, the aspects, how it colors our experience. So, for example, if you have the moon in Cancer, you're going to have a much more emotional landscape, most likely. And if you have a moon in Virgo, it's a little different. This is a perception more analytical, more practical. We can see filtered reality in our modern lives. If you look at the way we take in content nowadays, everything is completely designed around our own desires, our own filters. If you think about Instagram, for example, people aren't putting their ugly shots of themselves where they don't look great. It's filtered. We're viewing it as a representation. It's carefully curated. It's highlighting certain moments and leaving out other moments. Schopenhauer's concept of the will takes us right into the heart of what drives life itself. It blends beautifully with these astrological symbols like Mars and Pluto. So, will is an unconscious, blind force. It's ceaseless, it's unrelenting. It keeps pushing us forward towards our desires, towards our needs, and it pulls us often without us realizing its influence. So, there's this restlessness about it. It's a pull that propels our actions, but also keeps us striving, keeps us wanting something. Just as you're fulfilling one desire, another one opens up, and fulfillment might always be out of your reach if you get into that loop. Mars is raw action, raw desire. It's pushing us to assert ourselves and to seek some sort of success in life. It's drive. And Pluto, on the other hand, it's deeper transformative will over time, takes time. Mars is fast. It's like action, action. And Pluto is like the slow burn. It forces us into experiences that are life altering. They're usually not pleasant and they break us down, but they bring us back stronger. That's really the ultimate phoenix energy. So through this lens, we have Schopenhauer again, his idea of the will. It mirrors how Mars and Pluto work. Mars is the drive and the act to conquer, and Pluto is the push to profound and sometimes painful growth. One other thing Schopenhauer emphasizes is that will is outmatching our intellect. Really, it's our will that's steering us. It's making life in a constant tension between wanting and striving. And sometimes that makes suffering. And sometimes it makes success. And then you have to decide what you do next. That's just part of what's behind it all. The insight that he has there is leading us to explore how those planets are working in our lives. Schopenhauer's philosophy of the will is that intellect sheds light on our unconscious desires. They overshadow rational thought. So if you've ever had this experience where you know something's not right for you, it's not good for you, that person's not good for you, but damn, they're sexy and you just can't help it. Like that's desire over intellect. I don't know. There's lots of different ways we can go into that, but the intellect is actually a servant to the will. And after we do something, the intellect usually has to catch up. Even though we believe we're rational, oftentimes we are acting on our will. In astrology, we see that tension with Mercury. That's the planet of our intellect. It's our filter of communication. It's how we take in info and how we give back out info into the world. When Mercury encounters Mars or Pluto, Mercury is very fast and it's also very quick to adapt. There's no limits for what Mercury can do. So it's adaptable. But the drive and the transformation of Mars and Pluto give Mercury a run for its money. This dynamic is captured really well by Schopenhauer's idea that our desires and our unconscious drives shape our lives more than our intellect alone can. We have to understand the will first. And the idea of that desire-driven action overriding logic at times it can change the perspective, and we can explore our inner conflicts and how that contributes to our growth and use our intellect to process those experiences of the will. It pushes us towards new desires most of the time. The satisfaction that we might feel, eventually that wears off and we want something different. And it's ceaseless and striving and a cause of suffering. It's a Buddhist concept as well. Schopenhauer saw suffering as a necessary part of life, and that's what Saturn is. Saturn's very Schopenhauer-like. Saturn teaches us that wisdom and maturity arise from these very challenges that feel limiting. Now, Schopenhauer didn't think that suffering was the final word. It wasn't like, okay, everything's horrible, bye-bye, the end. Close the book. That's the point. No. He believed that beauty and spirituality offered that potential escape from the cycle of desire and suffering. In moments of transcendence, of transcendent beauty or deep spiritual connection and experiencing that as part of our lives and bringing that into our lives, focusing on it, it's a place where we can find peace. And this escape, or whatever you want to call it can be brief, sure, but it represents a possibility that it can be extended. There's a way. And that's why I talk a lot about your creativity or self-expression. That's fifth house stuff. Fifth house in your chart is really your inner child. It's your joy and pleasure and happiness. And it's when nobody's judging you what you would be. So Joseph Campbell has this thing where he says, follow your bliss. I think the fifth house is the follow your bliss house. You can find it there, at least some clues. Now let's get a little deeper into this beauty and spirituality as an escape route from suffering. Schopenhauer believed that one of those few ways to break free from that cycle, he saw art as that escape route. It can be any kind of art where you go to that point where you just are in a transcendent place. I have had that experience doing music. There are these moments where I feel like I'm not even doing anything. I'm a witness to the experience of the art. Schopenhauer thought in these moments of pure freedom, pure contemplation, this could be reading a book, right? That's art too. We can find peace and a brief release from that endless cycle of craving and suffering, etc. So that lines up really well with astrology because Venus and Neptune both represent the qualities of transcendence. Venus is beauty, love, art, music. It offers us an experience in our life where we have grace and connection. Now, Neptune is the next level of that. Neptune is in the realm of spirituality and dreams and higher consciousness and universal love. It connects us to the mystical, the mythical, the divine, and everything that's beyond our ego, the detachment of all of that. So together, Venus and Neptune guide us to this higher state of being where we're connected to something greater than ourselves. It's moving through us. And that's what I'm talking about. When you get to that point, when you're in your art, whatever that is, where you're not even doing anything, it's just happening. That's transcendence. Venus and Neptune are the release valves of this experience of potentially of suffering. So that echoes in Schopenhauer, where he believes that beauty gives us this much needed break from the constant cycle. that longing, that desire. Now we'll wrap all of this all together with one of Schopenhauer's key ideas of his philosophy. It's asceticism. Did I say that right? Asceticism. It's Asceticism. I always feel like I say it wrong. In simple terms, asceticism is about living life with self-discipline and renouncing all indulgences, especially the pursuit of material things. Schopenhauer did believe that the root of all human pain was a craving for more. So that's whether it's just more stuff or more success or a different experience, a different partner, I don't know, whatever it was, it's never going to be something you can truly escape. Let's say instead of giving up the things that we desire, we give up our attachment to the results, no expectations. And then you're just surprised and delighted by things when you don't assume and you don't expect and you don't have this attachment to the result, the end result. Miss Gilbert said something really good about that. I can't remember what she said though.
This beautiful poem of approach that I really love, and I'm probably not going to get the whole thing right, but it says something like, I will honor your gods, I will drink from your well, I bring an undefended heart to our meeting place, I will not negotiate by withholding, I am not subject to disappointment, I have no cherished outcome.
Schopenhauer says we need to stop chasing things that are actually never really going to satisfy us. This gives us more space, more peace, more grace. Astrology and philosophy, at their core, are both about understanding this deeper unseen force that's moving and shaping us and the world around us. Schopenhauer's philosophy and the focus on the will to understand that, just understanding that one thing, the concept of the will, that there's tension. There's tension between our desire and our intellect, the things that are pushing us forward, like the plutonic, that's so slow, and chthonic, it's deep, it's there. And it's part of that will, but we can transcend a lot of the suffering, not all of it, but we can transcend a lot of it by looking into our planetary connections that we have. What's the point of any of it? Well, stepping back, reflecting on these dynamics, looking at wisdom from people like Schopenhauer and other philosophers, both in astrology and in life. Sometimes the key to peace is just recognizing that everything is a cycle, everything comes through from the will and the desire, and knowing how to pause and reflect and find the release valves through art and self-expression and joy and transcendence, spirituality. That's where the true magic happens. Again, you can find Schopenhauer's book on my website, elnatali.com. I like you just the way you are. Thank you for being here with me, and I'll talk to you next time.